States. We also have Simon Jacobs on as head of education in headquarters in Israel, and then Kyle Valerie here, who is one of the partners of Stretch Effect, and you'll be watching and following along and meeting some of the rest of the team. And myself, Brian Farber, U.S. office. I run BlazePod USA with the group and the crew, and we're excited to launch the Reactive Intelligence Wall for the first time here today. Now, these guys have had it up on their wall the longest, so when Kyle takes over later on, he's going to be able to explain some of the stuff he does with his athletes or with his patients on the therapy side. Want to take it away?
Yeah. So, again, like Farber said, I work for the education department, which is super fun because it's a little bit of how all of this got started. The Reactive Intelligence Wall essentially is an answer that we've been looking for a long time, meaning this. Everybody sets pods up in different ways. We're going through drills, we're going through everything, but we don't know if everyone's setting it up the right way. So we always get the question asked, what's a good score? And we haven't been able to accurately give that data to anybody. And so this is our opportunity to give normative and standardized data across the population set that is going to now allow everybody to use it to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. And so the more data sets we get in, the more we're going to be able to validate the scores that are on here. One of the things that we're really excited about with it is the idea that each location, like Stretch Effect, who sets up a Reactive Intelligence Wall and signs up as a BlazePod lab, will fall into our system. And so all the data that's collected will be able to go through the system. And in an effort to help create a subset that's so big that all the scores will kind of normalize themselves, and we'll be able to really extrapolate data that matters for us on this one particular drill. So we're going to kind of get into that a little bit today. Before we get started, we're going to walk through exactly what it is, what the products are. So as you can see on the wall, we're calling it the Reactive Intelligence Wall, but it's made up of 3 products that BlazePod already sells. So we have your basic pod, as you know. There's a pod base, this awesome rubberized piece. And then right here behind us, this is the new product, which is called the wall mount. And that plugs right in. So even though the wall mount is permanently affixed to a location in a wall, we have it set up in the RIW format. You can create any sort of format you want with your own. But these can then get pulled out and then used as you would. Whoop, you can't even see that in the camera. Drop down to the ground, and you can use these as you would normally. The pod base is awesome because they prevent your pods from falling over. Once this is set up in on the wall, I want to talk about the positioning of this. So BlazePod did a really good job at taking the anthropometrics of the average human height, right? So height and width. And so that's where these are. These are set up at certain dimensions. So if you want to create this on your own, BlazePod has the dimensions set for you. You stand right in front of the wall. And even Brian, professional soccer player, who's a little bit below average height, what do you have? 5'2", 5'3"? No. What are you at? 5'8"? About 5'8". Brian's able to reach the lower pods and the upper pods without having any sort of issue. And again, this is why that data set becomes so important. Somebody who's a little shorter, somebody who's a little bit taller, doesn't really matter, because once we can combine all that information into the same one, we'll throw out the anomalies and we'll have a great population set of data.
Shoulder width, chest height.
So Brian's talking about the shoulder width pods in the middle, the ones right in front of you. And it actually takes some individuals based on peripheral vision, what they're looking at. Do they want to be a meter back? Do they want to be a little bit closer? It all varies per individual. And that's one of the coolest things about it. Kyle and I were talking earlier, because I like to have my clients. Well, actually, let me bring up Kyle. Kyle runs Stretch Effect here, and was talking about how he uses the wall. So let me turn some time over to him for a minute.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. So there's a lot of benefits to the standardization. And when it comes to coaching someone, having too many variables can be distracting and conflicting at the same time. So when we've done this one, we just like to set it up and have people run through it. And I think he's going to show us one of the speed taps, which is usually where we'll start people. You just see a single color and you just knock them out. It's fun for people. It's not too challenging, and it gets them a little bit of their feet wet with the conversation. But then we like to talk about the peripheral vision components of it and understanding how to use our periphery in space, which this is one of the beautiful things of this, is it's a direct training tool for this concept. And to have someone have like more of a focal point as kind of like a fuzzy focal point to where they can see their periphery, when they're using the wall, they're not looking at where they're touching. They're just right here. It's just kind of like if you're playing basketball or any other sport. Yes, you're supposed to see the ball, but you should be seeing everything else around you at the same time. So if I'm just looking here and I don't see the defender, that's going to be a problem. And when we come to interacting with a static tool that can be used dynamically, this gives you a lot of bandwidth with the application.
Yeah, thanks for that. And that'll go into a little bit about what we're going to show you. So some of the things that people have benefited from besides just reaction training or ocular vision to reaction training, increased processing speed, your ability to see something, process what you want to do, and then react to that. There's also some neurological reprogramming. If we have athletes or clients that have a frozen shoulder, giving them a target has some sort of ability. They can start low to medium, and then eventually get high, and then high with resistance. You can put timing on there. They can react to the light under time sequence instead of having to hit it, which is a benefit. There's also ideas of neural priming. Simon loves using the word neural priming, where this can live in a gym. This can live outside of a school. This can live in a locker room setting. Basically, before you hit the field, before you hit training, you can, or as they get off the table, in Stretch Effect, they do table work, and then they do 70% of their workout here. But the idea is, all right, we've downregulated the nervous system in a sense by doing a table work. Now, can we turn that on a little bit before we get out there? And simply moving quickly and kicking up those neurons will really help fire that up. So from neural priming before game, you can also do some stuff afterward to help downregulate your nervous system by slowing down the time, having them go through something. They just learned something complex. They can get back on the wall. It's static, like Kyle was saying. So there's not even though there's flashing lights, the static ability can help with whatever kind of motor programming you're trying to push into it. And there's thousands of things that can be done. And so we're going to show you a couple today. What are we going to start with, Farbs?
Yeah, so we're going to start with just a reaction exercise. It's actually called RIW Speed Tap. This will be a nice benchmark for you when you install the reactive intelligence wall to understand who has the fastest hands in your office, or the most maybe quickest decision making. There is no real decision making on this exercise. As we go through the progressions, we'll talk about right hand red, left hand blue, and different variables you can add, or distracting pods under the focus light logic. But if you have questions, free to throw them down in the chat, and we will address them as we go through. So just type it in there. We'll do this first demonstration. It's 30 seconds. I'm going to be going after one color. And as Kyle mentioned, some people will stand maybe a little too close, and you realize where you're comfortable enough to still reach and be flexible to get there, but also be able to see it. So you want to find that little middle ground, and you kind of get better after a few rounds of it. So we'll see how I do.
He practiced a lot already.
10 seconds. Come on.
Let's get it. Working. Oh, get it. Almost. Yeah, 61. No one's doing that.
61.
No
61 is not my personal best, but it's a pretty good score. As you get better at it, you start to realize, like what you saw right there, I hit the wrong pod twice, maybe three times. Maybe 3 times. Easy. back there. But there's no punishment in this
No
activity.
strikes. No strikes.
I'm not getting a strike. All I'm doing is burning
Slowing yourself down.
my own time, right? So as we progress into the next round, we'll be able to talk about the differences in decision making you have to take.
Now, and also just talk about why this is beneficial, because we had the glass mounts previous to this, to the wall mounts, which was a little skittish because when you really get going, you hit it pretty hard, right? And you're gonna, because you don't care about anything else other than how fast you can hit it. And so with this, not an issue at all. Previously, there was a lot of like, oh, don't try to, and then now you're trying to be delicate with it. So I think it takes that entire conversation out of play.
That's right. One of the primary reasons why, besides the normative data, the reactive intelligence wall was developed was to take those suction cups off the windows, the glass, or the whiteboards, and actually give you something more substantial to use.
Yeah.
But people have been using that forever, and so this is a great solution. We see in the chat a number of people asking about where they can get it. Again, if the bundle has the wall mount, the pod base, and the pod with the hardware included. And so I think Simon will push you a link out and talk about that. But the other thing I want to talk about here before we move on is this is very progressive and regressive. Farber just went through that. He killed that. He had a couple mishits, but there was no stress involved there. And so when you start looking at, like, sometimes it's called a hot drill or an open skill that has a lot of complexity, the more complex a drill or the more hot a drill, as we talk about it on the cognitive focus, it can cause a lot of neurological like stress, right? It's like it can leave you fired up. It can leave you in a way that maybe we as therapists or as trainers don't want to have as you're leaving a session. And so we can progress this or regress this as needed. And obviously I'm working with an elite athlete, scored 4 goals the other day.
No goalie.
Not the Super Bowl. But he wants to go up, right? He wants to challenge himself. That's the type of person he is. And so how are you going to progress this drill?
Yeah, so this next activity we're going to do, it actually can't be used in our benchmarking because there's a way to cheat it, essentially. But in a setting like this where you have people watching in the background, calling you out, controlled environment, we're going to go right hand red, left hand blue. So we add a layer of decision making, but we're also adding the ability where now I can't just touch the closest pod from the closest hand. I have to reach across, right? I'm working on, you want to handle that part? What am I doing?
Well, we're working on some cross patterning with the body, right? Which is going to be important when we talk about actually functionally applying anything, because it's not going to be directly in front of us, which that's not how sport works.
And how would you cheat it? By hitting blue with
if I just hit the wrong color with the wrong hand and I get the score at the end, I'll get a great
Pods
score.
don't know which hand.
But
That's right. Yeah, the pods don't.
So the data and analytics we want to be able to use correctly for the people that that are using these to help progress. And so this would be a drill that's great between you and a coach or you and your athlete.
Within a facility.
Yeah.
Right. Within a facility that can have their own standardization.
Yeah, but it's the iPad's not going to show, or the device isn't going to show that you hit the blue color with your right hand.
So the way that we handle that now is in a competitive environment where, let's say, my whole soccer team was in here. If somebody is judging, watching, you're just deducting a score from every wrong tap. So if I get 58 and I hit one wrong, I'm going to take 57. That makes sense? We're going to go 30 seconds. Right hand red, left hand blue. I will try not to mess up.
See how far he drops down. That's what we're going to see here.
We'll net score that.
Yeah.
Ooh, get it.
Good. I feel like we should be like bad fans and yell at him and taunt him while he's doing it.
So you can add controls, right? Like Farber for the last 3 years has done right hand red, left hand blue, and so he's very. So maybe what I would do is switch that, or give him 2 other colors to work with.
Yeah.
So as Kyle is saying, is you can throw in so many wonderful variables I know Farber's personality, and he works well by being told he can't do something. He wants to do it. He works well based on words of affirmation, like, hey, you killed it out there, right? But does he work well against something else? So you can start throwing in other variables at the same time to help really play with that psychological factor. That's the coolest benefit. One of the coolest benefits is having this static build out is now all the external noise that we want to push in, it's really easy. If Farber is killing this thing with his left hand and he wants to do some cross patterning or some dissociation, Kyle can bounce a tennis ball off the wall as he's going through it. Now he's introducing other components to create this, I hate using the word chaotic, but life is chaotic. He's adding a little bit more noise, a little bit more chaos. The greatest thing about it is that it's static. And so we're just adding to it instead of having to set this up each time. So convenience becomes a huge part of the reactive intelligence wall.
Well, and you don't have to worry so much about the person administering it, right? It may not always be us, right? So when you're not there and you don't have the guidance, no longer do we have to be concerned about how it's set up. It's a little bit more plug and play for the end user, which I think allows for more controls and better result and experience for the client.
So we have a number of physical therapists out there, a number of individuals who kind of have a space like yours, therapists. Stretch Effect takes all clients and gets them moving better, basically. So what's your setup here? Walk us through, take a minute and walk us through your setup. If a practitioner wants to come in, how that's set.
So we use the wall and BlazePods in a number of different facets. But why we like this so much is because instead of looking down, which is what happens, which a lot of the applications will require, people are actually looking up and they're standing up. So for people in general with a large diverse population, we have a lot of variability that the cones and some of those is not so enticing. It's a little bit challenging. But I can set a grandmother up and a small child and anybody in front of this wall, and they understand how to look forward, which is also how they're standing. Now we use it for both, kind of like Michael had been mentioning, but we use it for ways that are stimulating. We also use it ways to a lot of if we have an ankle person and they're getting up into the higher levels of rehab, where we start to introduce other aspects of balance to challenge them. And this is ultimately a form of perturbation at that point. And so we're using external stimulus versus a physical contact, so they create their own perturbation in essence. So there's a lot of kinesthetic components to this in addition to the cognitive aspects.
Yeah, super true.
So like, if you brought in that same exercise that I just did with a BOSU ball.
Put him on a BOSU ball right here in front of it, that is going to be a lower score, right, for sure. And the likelihood that we might have someone here just to manage him also is there, but that's a safety component. And then we add in, balance beams, RX pads, and then even if we were, asking you questions and having you respond at the same time, that's a whole nother level of variability. But it allows them to at least get good at something so that they're good at a single thing. And then we can, isolating and then integrate whatever the application might be. And for when we're training real life application, you're talking about like frozen shoulder stuff. Well, sometimes we do have to move quick. And when you're coming out of an injury state, you don't usually have a lot of confidence. And a lot of the protocols are too controlled. And so we can actually train here to actually have a real world environment where somebody can actually build confidence in their ability, because we know they have the range, gain the range, train the range. We understand that we've given them a capacity. They haven't necessarily, their body doesn't believe it yet. They don't understand that they can use it on demand. And this is a space that can train them for that. And then now they have confidence when they go out in the world and that they feel that they can use what they have.
Something really interesting about reacting, and our education platform is called Flash Reflex Training. The idea is being able to move as quickly as a reflex. And a lot of times someone will be apprehensive to move, to do a cut, to move quickly until you drop something. And then they do that and they go, oh my gosh, it didn't hurt. Right. And so incorporating reaction training into that helps them build that confidence. I want to answer a question because I think it's interesting here. We got someone who has a 6'7" basketball player or a 5'3" soccer player worrying about how do you collect normative data there? We had talked about this earlier. There's two ways. The app now accounts for each individual to plug in all of their athletes or all of their players. And so you can collect a data set simply for them over time. Or the hope with these labs is no matter how tall you are, how short you are, and it does matter. It absolutely does matter. But again, these are all, these are random lights as well. And so Barber can't go, maybe 70% of his lights were right here and 70% of mine were down here. The hope is to get thousands of points of data in there that we can push off these anomalies. And sure, eventually, once you plug in your player who is 6'7", we'll be able to take everybody between 6'5" and 7 feet tall and classify them. But for right now, we don't have that. And so we're just looking for as many inputs as possible so that we can have that nice subset that at least is meaningful data to work from.
And right now what we do is we have a board, and when we do like monthly challenges with some of our people, we'll have a standard one that we have everyone do that's like comfortable. We still break it up by gender and age, because I mean the likelihood that a high school athlete is going to move faster than a 65-year-old grandmother is pretty high. So I don't know that we should be comparing those two to each other, even though they are on something that's fixed and consistent as can be. So right now we just keep that categorically ourselves, but I know that there's stuff in the works to be able to.
Well, right now, so you'll have your population set up. You'll have each of your athletes that has their gender, their age, well, I guess age or name apart, gender, age, height, weight in there. And then we'll extrapolate some of that information to categorize it.
Yeah.
And we'll throw out some of the information that is irrelevant to us to create as much as possible. So there are going to be some data points that we won't use to get the applicable information until we get to the point where we can pull all that in and make a lot of sense out of it. There's also personal laws out there or privacy laws out there that are like, you can't use this, you got to use a nickname. So we're working through all that as well, but we're pretty excited about the potential.
A couple of questions that are coming through. I think it's Sean, just so we're clear, when we have instructions for setting up the reactive intelligence wall in inches and centimeters, so that's easy to provide when you're setting them up. Just for the exact heights, these are 60 inches, these are 30 inches, these are 55 inches off of the ground, all measured off the floor, so you get consistent measurement if your ground is level. And then these are 16 inches apart, and these are 48 inches apart. So we can talk about that if you have any specific questions, I'm happy to help address it. I've set up several of these. I set this one up actually, so I did a pretty good job, right? It's level.
Go ahead and just show them again too. I think we have some questions, as I think some people missed the beginning of what that actually looks like.
But yeah, we'll cover that at the very end. I want just to make sure anybody who missed that, you stay on the end. We'll talk about how to apply it to the wall. Want to move forward, but the next piece is another exercise that we have, which is a bilateral comparison. And I'm going to have Kyle kind of take over with the team. But what they're looking for here when they do it, it's going to be a home base activity. This is going to be the actual home base. I'm going to put my left hand behind my back. My right hand is always going to have to come back to this. And I'm going to touch the other satellite pods and come back to this every time. But what they're kind of looking for in that activity, whenever you're ready, you can start.
So I'm going to introduce Dr. Nick Perkins here. He's going to kind of walk us through some of this and tell you about how this is relevant and when you would apply it. So, Mr.
Hey, everybody. So yeah, one of the big things you see with the wall is the diagonal pattern, right? So we think back to P&F patternings, right? We're going outside, across the midline, working at diagonals. Why do we do that? Because it's functional, right? We do most of our life is in these areas up, down, up, high, and low, not just straight out front, off to the side. So one of the beauties of this is we got these great diagonal patterns. So if we're doing a shoulder drill, like Barber's going to do one-handed, he's going to have to cross midline, which we know is good for balance and brain connection, getting both sides of both hemispheres working in the brain. And then he's also getting a pattern through his shoulder, very similar to our peanut pattern. So we have up front, and then we have these high-low diagonals. We can then compare it right and left, right? Are we getting the right side of the brain fired up more, the left side of the brain? So that becomes more of a cognitive or neural component to this, as well as a joint or a tissue type of movement pattern with like what we would do with PNF. So we could take a PNF pattern on the table and then apply it to a reaction drill here. So that's one, on the therapeutic side, that's what we like to do is, okay, how do we level this up from, okay, a boring maybe PNF drill that we've seen 1,000 times to, okay, let's apply it to something that's more functional, upright, like Kyle was saying, and then using the wall to get that reaction time going. So you're gonna run through this one?
And it's fun, by the way. It's engaging for people.
Yeah, that's it. It's gamifying. And anytime you can gamify something, it creates that element of like competition and
Absolutely.
and engagement.
So he has to come back home every time, and if we find that there's an area or a sticky point, you could make home this top left, or you could make home bottom left, where you're repeating the pattern down. So he's repeating right back to the center each time. He's going back to his right side. There we go.
Well, yeah. And other things we can coach to. How's he breathing? Right? Where is he at? Is he on the center of his feet or is he on his toes? So these are the things that if we're trying to, we understand that, if he's got some Achilles issues, and then we see him as soon as he kind of gets going, he's on his toes the whole time. He's never unloading his Achilles. We can coach to that because he's getting distracted by the pods, and we're trying to coach other patterns at the same time.
One of the other cool things here is each one of these hits will tell you his average reaction time from home base. So the moment he touched that home base pod to the satellite pod, and you can take these and see what distance that pod was and how long that took, and it'll give an average reaction time. So there's a lot of other things that you can work on. You can look at the extrinsic things like breathing patterns, and is he tightening up? Is he white knuckling stuff? Is his eyes? Or you can just simply take the data set afterward and say, all right, like this was your average reaction time compared to your right hand, your left hand, compared to 2 weeks ago. He just played a soccer game where he crushed it. Is he more upregulated, more downregulated? Is he slower today? You can then start getting into the right questions. I like to use this sometimes as a tuning fork as well. If I have a client come in and I don't know if they, a younger athlete who heard their parents fighting, or a client who's going through, divorce or something like that, I don't know how to deload them, unload them. This is such a great metric, such a great tuning fork to help me understand the level at which I can push my client. It's like, all right, I compare, it's a benchmark. I can compare their baseline to something that's happening. And I don't have to get into any of the psychological stuff. I can just say, hey, like we're either going to decrease volume or decrease load today, just based on what I just found out there. I don't have to ask them those questions. I observed that they're a little bit low, and then I tested them, which kind of proved that to me. Now I can put them on a protocol that is not going to exhaust them and make them feel worse. The one thing that we had talked about, this is an open skill drill, right? This is something that is a hot drill. The more of these that you do over and over and over again, I can take my elite athlete and actually start beating down his neurological system. That's why I want to be smart about how I'm utilizing this.
When and how.
When and how to apply that into the system. But such a versatile system to use for sure.
Yeah, and one other thing is we do a lot of times think about the BlazePods as reaction and time and speed, but you can apply it to strength and mobility as well, right? So like what I was talking about with the PNF pattern of mobility, you add a TheraBand or you add some resistance, maybe slow the drill down. Now we're not going for speed, but we're getting a strength component, right? And then we're getting that neural adaptation component that is going as well. So, taking it and flipping it on its head a little bit, where it's a, speed, performance space, which, that's our upper echelon thing, but we can apply it to some, anybody really. We've had kids and 50, 60, 70-year-old people on it as well. And, it's fun for them, and it makes it into a more, functional, adaptive type of environment for, on the PT side.
And it will challenge all your type A people a lot. So that's the thing, that you have a lot of type A people that want to be challenged and need like measurable success. This is like a perfect tool to give them. And they will just come in and start it and get going and practice before their sessions. After their sessions, they'll stay and they're like, I am going to beat this thing. And they want to know where they stand in pecking order against other people. So, and it creates its own conversation within the community of the people that come to a space, because it is engaging and there's some common ground. Everybody comes to the same wall, to the same pods.
Yep.
Now, a couple of things on the activity I just did with the home base. I was always coming back to my right hand. I was positioning it here. My left hand's down my back. I switched that pod. Now it would be my left hand. I'm not going to do it because it's going to be the same exact score, 35. I'm the same every single time.
Crushes. Yeah.
Just kidding. But you will be able to identify maybe a particular impingement in my shoulder that would help these guys be like, oh, well, that's something you didn't tell us about that we were able to identify with the wall. And then the other thing he was saying was everything right now we're talking about, a lot of it is competition. But if you just set the exercise up and to do 30 taps and don't want to do 3 rounds of 30 taps. So now whoever it is that's in here is just going to tap it a certain number of times wherever they are, 30 taps, take a break, repeat. Everybody's at a different level based on their injury and their rehab and getting back to life and healthy. So couple questions. I want to make sure as we cover this and everybody's signing off, we know it's been 30 minutes. Feel free to shoot those questions in. For anybody who joined late, we want to make sure that we're really clear about the application to the wall. This is the launch of the reactive intelligence wall with our new wall mounts. The wall mounts are semi-permanently put on. You're going to put them on there and leave them on there until you're ready to take them off. You're not going to put them up and take them down daily. We put this in, 2 months, 3 months ago? A couple months ago. They've been using it with their patients and their athletes and getting tons of insights for us. It's kind of like our beta testing. They probably tested more people on this wall than anywhere else in the world at this point in time, which was great that we were able to come in here and do the demonstration and talk to you. But at the same time, understanding that these are screwed in to the wall. You will be putting holes in your wall. The wall mount will be there. Now, this is our configuration. The questions may be, do I have to put them up that exact same way? We have research. We have Kevin Wilk. We have George Davies. Those guys are doing research for shoulders, and they have a different configuration for just the right shoulder and just the left shoulder. With this pod would be here, there'd be another here, here, and here, and then same thing, here, here, and here. And that's what they're doing. But when they want to do the reactive intelligence wall, they put their pods into
Only
this
in those ones.
same configuration, even though they may have a wall mount here and a wall mount here.
Yep.
So it's really whatever you guys want to do and set up in your own space. This is 4 feet wide, so you need a little bit of space outside and above to set it up, but it's fairly easy to install. Put them on concrete, I'll put them in drywall. Yeah, if there's any questions about that, I'm happy to help walk you through the setup. Any other questions, set them in there though, so we can start to address these.
Yeah, if you guys are gonna, we're gonna have this on display too at the APTA CSM show, which is in San Diego. If any of you therapists are gonna go there, we can talk more about it. Want to quickly apologize for some of the sound issues we were having. I know some people couldn't hear us for a while, so apologize there. This is recorded, so we'll definitely get it out to you. And then any pertinent questions that you guys have, we can kind of jump on that. Simon's doing an awesome job back home at answering as much as he can, but we got the pros here. We're gonna answer questions or wrap up.
We're gonna do one final activity,
Woo!
which is the RIW challenge.
Okay, this one's a good one. This is the where it was all kind of developed from, right? The big challenge.
All right, so the RIW challenge is with the focused light logic. If you're familiar with creating and saving your own activities, my color will be blue. My distracting colors will be red, pink, and green. But if you don't get to it fast enough, so I'd be going there. But if I don't get to it fast enough, it will trigger on its own every 2.5 seconds, I think it is. Oh, that's the other one. That's the other challenge. Sorry, Simon. I blew that one. Yeah. Well, we're going to just do the RIW challenge and see what I get. This is the one that does set you back. If you get, oh, that's because I had on the wrong one.
I think it's,
That was the reactive intelligence wall. Right,
I just can't read.
right hand
I
challenge.
just can't read. That's what it is.
He's really good at BlazePod stuff.
Where is the show? All right, it's right there. This, right? Yeah. Boom.
yeah, this is
2.5 seconds. All right. Oh, geez. Starting over.
It does have a delay.
So if I don't tap it in 2.5 seconds, it will automatically go from there to somewhere else. Now, that's 2.5 seconds is fairly easy in this setup. Maybe not easy for everybody, but it should be pretty easy. You can take the time down. You can adjust it. You can make it 2 seconds. You can make it 1.5 seconds. You can make it a second. you're really cruising if you do it at a second. I would probably recommend 2.5 is like the lowest you go to make sure people are still confident. But the other thing is, if I touch the wrong color 3 times, I strike out. So the exercise is over. So you really have to focus. And when you know you've made one mistake or you've made a second mistake and you know you're one tap away from ending the activity, you really have to process, make sure you're looking at it. That's when your brain slows down. That's when your body tries to stay under control. You're not operating on like that fine line of like being out of control. You're just really, really sensitive to every movement you make because you don't want to mess it up. And especially if you're competing with other guys or your team or whoever's in the office, you're trying to set a goal and be on the leaderboard. You're definitely going to focus more on that. So I'll do 1 round of this. Again, I'm going blue only, and I'm avoiding the other colors. And this is the process.
Let's throw in some external cues here.
I know, external.
I don't want it.
Those legs are toothpicks you're on, Bubba.
Yeah.
Dude, your hair looks awful
Hit the
today.
green one. Hit the green one. No, green.
Red, 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 red.
Don't listen to them. Block out the noise.
Close your eyes. Close your eyes.
Those aren't real Nikes. They say Mikey on them, bro.
What was the score of the Super Bowl?
35-30.
Who kicked the last kick?
I got 43, but I did have 1 wrong tap, I think. So
Yes.
it happens. They weren't helping me, obviously. But that's kind of some of the progressions, the activities that are already built in the app. We have more coming, but I think we have like 15 already pre-made. Simon, maybe want to correct me on that one. But yeah, guys, we're happy to introduce this to you. If you have any final questions, let's have them.
Well, the
Thanks.
question.
I'm just going to start with something, guys. Just to any of you guys out there that might be worried about it, the positioning is fixed. The pods are not. Okay, so that's very important. You can always put the pods back into the exact position, but you can also use them for any other drill you want on the floor, on cones, tie them to the rigs, whatever you need to do.
Yeah, it's essentially the only real difference is the wall mounts and then the application within the drills. Because we have the cones here also, which are an amazing application. And so for anything higher level, and then we use the wall mounts for the floor, and then this for the wall. So it gives us kind of all facets of more feet, or if we're doing hand-based drills, bare position stuff. And then we use these for a lot of balance stuff, or if it's more dynamic running. So they don't have to go all the way to the ground. Most ball sports, you're not going to go all the way to the ground unless you're using your feet. And then this one for anybody who's has a sport where they're having to be upright, which is most of them, this is by far the best application because they have to be heads up and they have to move dynamically left and right. That is like the basis of almost every athletic ability.
And one other question, just for you're a business guy. You guys are in business to support families. How has the Reactive Intelligence wall in this display kind of maybe changed your environment, or can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it brings energy to the space for sure, which can sometimes be relative to the individuals in the space, which you don't always have control over. So by default, all of a sudden this thing, and it raises a lot of questions. Oh, what's that? What are those? Or even if we had the pods over there in the corner, no one's really might see a light from time to time. But this just by itself raised a lot of questions. But when you talk about, we are more of like a membership-based, cash-based PT application, and we need to create an experience for our people. This allows as a tool that we use to create challenges, and it creates a really engaging application, which most people are not going to have this at their house. Right? Most people are not going to, they could buy the pods and they'll have it on the floor and stuff, but that's not, most people are going to redesign, unless they're going to whole gym setup, then they can put it in their gym. There's fewer of those people. So just having it so that people can come in, it's engaging, it's exciting. It's a good warm up and or cool down, depending on what the day is and what's going on. And it's been a positive feedback from everybody. And, you know, they want to come in. It's another reason to come in. So it's just value add. Thank you.
Awesome. Is there any final questions there? I think we're good. How do we program these sequences? Programming sequences, you can create and save just like any other activity. If you wanted to make a sequence specific activity, we can do that. We have actually a boxing coach that does one particular exercise. He has them wrapped around his heavy bag, but in the terms of sequence, he does 13 jabs in a row and a hook. The hook can either be high, medium, or low, but it's back to the same 13 jabs and then feet and hook. And then he does that same thing. You can get as creative as you want. Basically, what I'm saying is what you're looking for, whatever you need, you can essentially make it. Maybe a call with somebody from the team if you're needing a little bit of help, but that's not a problem to have. Simon's always good at taking those types of calls.
Just looking through any other comments. I know we're past our time, guys. On behalf of BlazePod, Brian Farber, Michael Cummings, want to give special thanks to Stretch Effect here. Got Kyle and his team, Evan and Nick. Big Chris over here hanging out.
Yeah.
Chris, jump over here. Come say
say
a
hi
big
to
wave. These
everybody.
guys are doing some amazing things. We're really grateful you guys came out. Ask questions. Help us out here. Again, if you're in San Diego in the next 2 weeks, we're going to be at the APTA show doing demos for days. So super excited to be out. And thank you guys. You guys have an awesome day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.